What creates a killer? Is it something we're born with, a flaw in our DNA? A predestined darkness? Or is it the crucible of experiences, the horrors we endure that sculpt the mind in ways we may never fully understand? For Dexter Morgan, it was neither simple fate nor genetic misfortune. It was a single, horrifying event, the brutal, senseless murder of his mother. That night didn't just take away the person who gave him life, it shattered the entire universe he knew. The safety of a home, the warmth of love, the innocence of childhood, all were ripped away in an instant, replaced by fear, confusion, and a shadow of darkness that would never leave him. From that moment, Dexter's mind became a battlefield. On one side, there was the child who craved love, human connection, and the simple comfort of safety. On the other, there was a storm, a gathering force of anger, obsession, and the first whispers of what he would later call the dark passenger. This was no mere figment of imagination. It was a compulsion, a relentless inner drive, pushing him toward violence, demanding precision, planning, and control. That duality, the innocence and the darkness, the vulnerability and the obsession, would define not only the man he would become, but the meticulously calculated killer he would hide behind a mask of perfect normalcy. But Dexter Morgan is far more than a fictional serial killer. He is a window into the human psyche, a mirror reflecting the terrifying ways trauma can bend morality, warp perception, and reshape instinct. He reminds us that the human mind is capable of containing both love and cruelty, empathy and ruthlessness, order and chaos, all at the same time. In this video, we are going to take you deep inside Dexter's mind, peeling back the layers of his childhood, his trauma, and the psychological forces that turned a frightened little boy into a man capable of meticulous, ritualized violence. We'll explore how the horrors of his early life rewired his brain, teaching him emotional suppression, hyper-awareness, and extreme self-discipline. We'll uncover the methods he used to channel that darkness into purpose, not random chaos, but carefully controlled acts of justice, guided by the infamous Code of Harry. And most importantly, we'll reveal the shocking, uncomfortable truth behind why Dexter became a killer. A truth so profound, even the most devoted fans may have never fully grasped it. By the end of this journey, you won't just understand Dexter Morgan as a character on screen. You'll see the devastating, fascinating impact of trauma on a human mind, the ways survival can shape morality, and the chilling possibility that the darkness within all of us may be lying dormant, waiting for the circumstances that awaken it. This is the story of Dexter's beginnings, the dark origins of a mind that would redefine what it means to be a killer, and challenge the way we think about morality, control, and the human capacity for both light and shadow. Dexter Morgan's story doesn't begin with forensic analysis, crime scene investigations, or even the thrill of the hunt. It begins with terror, raw, unfiltered, and utterly life-altering. As a young boy, Dexter witnessed the brutal murder of his mother. The scene was violent, chaotic, and incomprehensible for a child. Psychologists studying childhood trauma have long shown that exposure to extreme violence at a formative age doesn't just create fear, it fundamentally rewires the brain. It alters the way a child perceives safety, morality, and human behavior. For most children, a traumatic event like this would evoke uncontrollable fear, grief, and panic cries for help, a desperate search for comfort, an instinct to reach for a parent or loved one. But Dexter? He responded differently. Something in him shut down. He learned, almost instinctively, to suppress these overwhelming emotions. He retreated inward, observing, analyzing and cataloging every detail around him. Every scream, every shadow, every subtle movement became detail clues to understanding the chaos and eventually a map for survival. This is the pivotal moment in Dexter's psychological evolution. Trauma didn't just scare him, it trained him. It taught him the first, most important lesson of his life. The world is cruel, unpredictable, and dangerous. If he wanted to survive and eventually thrive, he would need to compartmentalize his emotions, control his impulses, and turn fear into strategy. What might have broken another child instead became the foundation for his extraordinary observational skills, his ability to predict human behavior, and his meticulous attention to detail. But there's a darker layer here. The same trauma that taught Dexter survival also planted the seeds of obsession and detachment. In suppressing his grief and terror, he inadvertently created a psychological space for the dark passenger to grow a part of him that would one day demand release through precise, ritualized violence. His mind, trained to control chaos, became fertile ground for something far more dangerous: the ability to enact judgment on those who had caused harm in the world, all while maintaining the facade of normalcy. Psychologists call this a hyper-adaptive response to trauma, the ability to turn fear into focus, chaos into order, and pain into power. Dexter's early life illustrates the paradox of trauma. It can wound, isolate, and scar a person, but it can also forge skills, resilience, and an uncanny ability to navigate the complexities of human behavior. In his case, this paradox set the stage for everything that came after: the compulsions, the rituals, and the cold, calculated pursuit of justice that would define him as both a killer and a survivor. By understanding this moment, the fear, the horror, and the survival instincts it triggered, we begin to see the architecture of Dexter's mind. This is not simply the story of a boy who witnessed a crime. It is the story of a mind reshaped by trauma, trained to observe, analyze, and ultimately control the darkness within. This is the origin of the killer that would one day walk among us, calm, composed, and deadly precise. Trauma alone does not create a serial killer. It is not the horror itself, but the way a mind adapts, restructures, and survives that sets the stage for darkness. For Dexter Morgan, the murder of his mother forced him into a level of emotional mastery that few humans ever achieve. His emotional suppression was not the absence of feeling, it was precision. It was a calculated, disciplined mechanism designed to keep him alive, to allow him to observe without panic, to act without being consumed by chaos. Psychologists refer to this as compartmentalization. Dexter learned to place grief, guilt, and natural empathy into locked mental boxes, hidden deep behind layers of consciousness. What remained at the surface was cold, unflinching observation, a lens through which he could analyze human behavior without distraction. Every movement, every reaction, every micro-expression became a data set to be stored and studied. Where other children might cry, flee, or break down, Dexter observed, recorded, and adapted. In this process, the foundation of his dark passenger was quietly taking shape. The dark passenger, a name Dexter would later give to the relentless, insatiable force within him, is not a metaphor. It is the psychological manifestation of unchecked compulsion, a voice born from trauma and honed by self-discipline. It is both a hunger and a guide, demanding action, planning, and release. Yet Dexter does something extraordinary. He does not succumb blindly to its urges. Instead, he imposes order on chaos. Every dark instinct is examined, measured, and given structure. Every compulsion is funneled into a system that allows him to act with deadly precision, while simultaneously maintaining the illusion of normalcy in his outward life. This is where the true genius of Dexter's psychology emerges. Most people, when confronted with overwhelming compulsion, either break under the weight of emotion or act impulsively, leaving traces, patterns, and consequences. Dexter, however, transforms instinct into ritual. The Dark Passenger is not an uncontrolled force. It is a partner, a co-conspirator, carefully guided by his intellect and his meticulously crafted moral code. Trauma, emotional suppression, and obsessive self-control converge to create a mind capable of extraordinary focus, extreme patience, and lethal efficiency. This early mastery of the self also reveals a deeper paradox. The more Dexter suppresses natural human emotion, the more he becomes hyper-aware of it in others. He notices fear, deceit, guilt, and weakness with the clarity of a predator studying prey. Empathy is not lost entirely, it is recalibrated. He can read emotions with precision, but without the vulnerability that comes from feeling them personally. This hyper-control, combined with keen observation, becomes the toolkit of a man who can live among society, love selectively, and kill with calculated ruthlessness, all while maintaining the facade of normalcy. By the time Dexter grows into adulthood, this intricate architecture of mind trauma, suppression, and the birth of the Dark Passenger has created something terrifying and fascinating.
Dexter lies about
a man who can walk unnoticed in the world, appear kind, competent, and even heroic while harboring a force within that compels him to act with surgical precision against those he deems guilty. The Dark Passenger is not simply a drive to kill. It is a structured, rationalized, and meticulously channeled compulsion that defines the core of Dexter Morgan's existence. Dexter Morgan's childhood trauma did more than create impulses. It sculpted the very framework of his morality. Witnessing violence that went unpunished taught him a brutal lesson. The world is unfair, chaotic, and indifferent to suffering. For most, such a realization might breed despair, anger, or helplessness. For Dexter, it sparked something different. A need to impose order, to create structure, and to find a way to channel the darkness within him towards something meaningful. Enter Harry Morgan, Dexter's adoptive father, a man who recognized the storm brewing inside the boy and understood that guidance, not suppression, was the key to survival. Harry's solution was deceptively simple, a moral architecture, later known as the Code of Harry. The rules were clear, yet profoundly transformative. Kill only those who deserve it: murderers, rapists, abusers, those who had evaded justice and continued to inflict pain on the innocent. Harry gave Dexter not only a set of instructions, but a lens through which to see his compulsion, not as a curse, but as a disciplined form of justice. This code transformed what could have been senseless chaos into calculated order. Dexter didn't kill indiscriminately. Every act was deliberate, premeditated, and guided by ethical boundaries. Each target was selected carefully, each plan meticulously executed, and every crime scene ritualized to maintain control. In a way, trauma provided him with raw power, heightened awareness, emotional suppression, and a compulsive drive. But it was the Code of Harry that shaped that power into purpose. It transformed him from a reactive child into a strategic, rational agent capable of navigating both darkness and society with precision. Psychologically, this combination of trauma and structured morality is fascinating. Trauma alone produces emotional detachment and compulsion, but when coupled with a moral framework, it allows for rationalization, self-control, and adherence to a purpose beyond mere survival. The Code of Harry is Dexter's internal compass, a guiding structure that keeps the dark passenger from consuming him entirely. It is what prevents him from becoming indiscriminate, impulsive, or chaotic, and instead molds him into a predator with discipline, strategy, and an almost ritualistic approach to justice. What separates Dexter from every other fictional killer, and even many real-world cases, is this deliberate fusion of trauma, morality, and ritual. He doesn't kill for thrill, excitement, or personal gratification. He kills with intention, guided by rules that reflect a twisted yet coherent moral philosophy. The violence he commits is not chaotic. It is purposeful, structured, and, in his own mind, ethically justified. Every ritual, from preparing the scene to cleaning meticulously afterward, reinforces this balance between compulsion and conscience, chaos and control. The Code of Harry also highlights a deeper paradox. Dexter's morality is entirely self-imposed. He recognizes the failings of societal justice, understands that punishment is often inconsistent or absent, and takes it upon himself to fill the void. His actions exist in a moral gray area outside the law, yet within a personal framework of right and wrong. This psychological tension, the coexistence of ethical reasoning with lethal compulsion, is what makes Dexter both compelling and terrifying. Trauma gave him the drive. The dark passenger gave him the need. But the Code of Harry gave him purpose, the blueprint for a life in which darkness could coexist with morality. In understanding this phase of Dexter's development, we see the intricate interplay between experience and choice. Trauma created the impulses. The moral code structured them, and ritualized behavior solidified them into a functioning system. Dexter's life is a testament to the human mind's ability to adapt to extreme adversity, to take horror and bend it into precision, to transform compulsion into purpose, and to walk the line between justice and vengeance with chilling clarity. This is the psychological architecture that allows a man to appear normal in daylight and become something almost mythic by night, a controlled, calculating killer with a moral compass unlike any other. What makes Dexter Morgan endlessly fascinating and profoundly unsettling is the paradox at the core of his psychology. He exists in two extremes at once, a calculating, methodical, cold-blooded killer, and a man capable of genuine, selective empathy. This duality is not accidental. It is the product of trauma, adaptation, and an almost surgical mastery over his own mind. On one side, there is the predator, precise, observant, and lethal. On the other, there is the human being capable of love, attachment, and moral reasoning, but only within carefully controlled boundaries. Dexter's capacity for selective empathy manifests in the relationships that matter most to him. His love for his sister Deborah is profound, yet measured. He protects her, guides her, and supports her emotionally, all while keeping the deepest parts of his psyche hidden. With his son Harrison, we see a rare tenderness. Dexter is aware that his child represents the future, the part of himself that must remain untainted by darkness. And even toward certain victims, or those who remind him of his own moral compass, he demonstrates brief glimpses of compassion, a restrained humanity that exists like the flickering candle amidst the shadows of his life. Psychologists studying high-functioning psychopaths note that the ability to maintain empathy selectively while simultaneously executing lethal actions is extraordinarily rare. Most individuals who display psychopathic traits struggle to form genuine emotional bonds, or their lack of empathy leads to indiscriminate violence. Dexter, however, is different. His empathy is carefully rationed. He knows when and where to invest emotion and when to withdraw entirely. This precision allows him to maintain human connections, navigate society convincingly, and yet remain unencumbered by the emotional interference that might
himself
compromise
and
his
murdering
methods.
king.
This paradox, the coexistence of love and violence, compassion and
As the
cruelty,
season comes to a
is
close,
central to
Dexter is
understanding
finally
how
free from all
childhood
the
trauma
threats to his
shaped
way of
Dexter.
life.
Trauma forced him to suppress natural emotion, yet it did not eliminate
And
his
secret
capacity
life
for
controlled
connection
by his
entirely.
murderous impulses.
Instead, it honed him, teaching him to measure, control, and deploy
And has secretly
empathy
kept
with
his old
intention.
apartment, unaware
He
that
learned that
used it to prepare
vulnerability
for his
could be
murders
deadly,
and
but
store
detachment could be isolating. The solution? A delicate balance. Enough
his blood
empathy to
sample
function in the
collection as they
world.
go to couples
Enough
therapy
detachment
work
to
on their
execute
issues.
the dark passenger without moral hesitation. This selective
Rita becomes
humanity
concerned that
also
he doesn't
fuels the
truly
tension
love
that
her
grips
amidst
audiences.
these str-
Viewers are repulsed by his murders, yet drawn to his reasoning,
a new
his
serial killer
loyalty,
emerges in
and his
Miami.
moments of emotional clarity. We see that Dexter is not simply a monster.
Bringing FBI
He is a
agent
study
Frank
in
Lundy back to
contradiction,
lead the
a
investigation.
living demonstration of how trauma, intelligence, and moral structuring can coexist with the capacity for
Lundy explains that this
profound
murderer, dubbed
darkness.
the Trinity Killer,
The more we understand this paradox, the more we realize that Dexter is not outside the
has killed
spectrum
3
of human
victims every year in
experience.
different cities for
He
the past 3
exists
decades.
at its extreme, a mirror reflecting what could happen when survival, compulsion,
Lundy has
and
long hunted the
conscience
mysterious
collide
Trinity.
in a
He begins
mind
a
molded by tragedy. Moreover, his selective empathy highlights
They are
another
shot
critical
at by a mystery
psychological element.
assailant, leaving
The
Lundy
tension
dead
between
and
instinct
Deborah
and
in
morality.
critical condition.
Dexter is capable of love, but he channels it through the strict boundaries of his moral
As
code.
Dexter tracks the killer
This
to
allows
his
him to
home, he
maintain
uncovers that the
identity and
unassuming
connection while still giving life to the dark passenger. In essence,
man
the
is named
paradox
Arthur
of
Mitchell,
Dexter
who is a
Morgan
high school
demonstrates
teacher and
that
church
the human
deacon.
mind can compartmentalize not just emotions, but morality itself, creating
runs
the
a charity
capacity
building
to
houses for
nurture
homeless
and
people
destroy
across America.
simultaneously. By examining this tension, we uncover the
And
unsettling
lives a
truth
normal
about
life with his
trauma
wife
and
children
survival.
in the suburbs.
It can produce not only resilience, but also a precise, controlled darkness.
Instead
Dexter
of turning
is a
Arthur over
testament
to the police,
human
Dexter
mind's
poses
ability
a man
to adapt to extreme adversity, creating a system where empathy exists in
named
rationed
Kyle Butler
doses.
to get close to the
Morality
Trinity Killer
is
to study him.
self-imposed, and darkness is channeled into disciplined, calculated action. This
As
is
the
why
pair grow
Dexter
closer,
remains
Arthur
one of the
helps
most
Dexter reconcile
psychologically
with Rita
compelling
and-
characters in television history. A man who embodies both the terrifying
Arthur's
and the
family
human,
intervenes and
the
Dexter
coldly
flees.
rational and the deeply emotional, in a single hauntingly intricate psyche.
Deborah gets a reluctant
So,
coin to help her gather
why
DNA
did Dexter
evidence.
Morgan become a killer? It wasn't random chance. It wasn't simply a matter of choice or circumstance. It was trauma, a trauma so
A man
profound
kills
that it
Freebo, who is
rewired
caught
his
by
mind,
Miguel, who believes
shaped
that
the
drug dealer
architecture of
was
his
in fact
emotions, and planted the seeds for what he would come to call the Dark Passenger.
Oscar's killer.
That
Dexter
single
lies
night,
about killing
The
Freebo.
murder of his mother became the defining event of his life, a moment that forced a
Tim
child to
cover up
develop
the
survival
murder.
strategies
Meanwhile, Deborah
most
and the
of us
Miami
could
Metro
never
Police
imagine.
Department begin
Fear, grief, and confusion were transformed into observation,
investigating a series of
calculation,
killings
and
in which all of
ultimately
the victims
control.
have a connection to
What emerged was not only a serial killer, but a psychologically disciplined
the
individual
missing Freebo.
capable of
Detective
channeling
Joey Quinn
darkness
is
into
transferred to the
structure,
Miami Metro
purpose,
Department.
and methodical action. Dexter's life is a chilling demonstration of how
investigation,
early
Deborah is approached by
experiences
Sergeant
can
Yuki
sculpt
Amato,
identity and behavior. Trauma taught him emotional suppression, the
Warns
ability
that
to
Quinn is under
compartmentalize
investigation by
thoughts and
internal
feelings,
affairs.
and to navigate a world that often seemed chaotic and unjust. It also
It asks
forced him to
Deborah keep an
confront
eye on her
questions
new
most
partner
people
and
never
report
face.
back on all of his
How do you
actions.
reconcile impulses you cannot control? How do you live a life that balances morality,
Elsewhere, Rita discovers
instinct,
that she is
and
pregnant
compulsion?
with Dexter's
For
baby.
Dexter, the answers were found in meticulous self-regulation, ritualized behavior,
Although Dexter
and
is at
adherence
first
to the
concerned
code
that
of
his lack
Harry,
of emotions
a
will make him
framework
bad
that
father,
allowed him to survive as both a human being and a predator. But the
Upon
lessons of
discovering and
Dexter
murdering a
Morgan
local
extend
predator,
far
he
beyond
becomes
his
reassured in
crimes.
his abilities to
He
do what
serves
must
as a
be done to protect
psychological
his
mirror,
children.
reflecting uncomfortable truths about the human mind. Trauma doesn't
And
just
so
leave
Dexter
scars,
proposes to
it can
Rita.
reshape thinking, perception, and moral reasoning. The mechanisms he
Believing
uses to
himself
control
ready
the
to
dark
be the
passenger's
perfect
selective
family man.
empathy, compartmentalization, ritual, and ethical rationalization
As the
are
bond
all
and trust
extensions of
continues
his
to grow
early
between
life
Miguel and
experiences.
Dexter,
And when we watch him navigate this duality, we are forced to confront a chilling
Miguel tells
question.
Dexter about a man
How
who
much
murdered
of
his
who
own
we are
wife that
is
Miguel was
shaped by
frustratingly
circumstance,
unable to convict.
and how much by the choices we make in response to that circumstance? Moreover,
Dexter
Dexter
takes matters into
challenges
his own
our
hands and
understanding of
kills the man.
morality. His killings are heinous, yet framed within a self-imposed ethical system.
Together to enact violent
He forces us
justice
to
against
examine
those
the
who
gray
deserve
areas.
it.
When does justice justify darkness? Can morality be constructed internally
Anton helps
rather
connect
than
Deborah to the
imposed
shadier
externally?
underbelly of Miami.
Could any individual under the right combination of trauma, intelligence, and compulsion
The
walk
pair
the
began
same
a
fine
secret
line between
romance.
hero and
Unaware of
villain,
this affair,
love
Batista
and
suggests
destruction, empathy and ruthlessness? These are questions that
that
linger
Anton
long
used his
after the
bait to
screen
draw
goes
out the
dark,
Skinner.
and they are what make Dexter Morgan one of the most psychologically compelling characters in
Despite
modern
Deborah's
storytelling.
resistance, the plan is set.
Finally,
kidnapped by the
The
serial
legacy of
killer.
Dexter's story is twofold. It is a cautionary tale about the impact of unresolved
And
trauma,
Freebo's associates were his
and it is a
perfect
testament
victims.
to the
Eventually,
human
Deborah
mind's
and Quinn
adaptability.
find and
The same mind that learned to suppress fear and grief also learned to plan,
Dave Anton,
calculate,
though King
and
manages
rationalize
to
morality
escape.
in extraordinary ways. Dexter Morgan is not just a fictional killer.
Dexter tries to
He is a
comfort Deborah
study
with
in
the revelation that
psychological
her father-
survival, the embodiment of duality, and a reflection of the shadows
Father
that
Harry
exist
Morgan
within
had
all
also
of
had
us.
an affair with an informant.
By
though
understanding
Dexter
his
keeps-
story, we gain insight not only into the making of a serial killer, but also
Secret
into
that
the
that
delicate
informant was, in
balance
fact,
between
his late
darkness
mother,
and
Laura.
control that exists in every human psyche. If you found this deep
As
dive
Dexter
into
and
Dexter
Miguel
Morgan's
continue their
mind
secret
revealing,
vigilante
don't
partnership,
forget to
Miguel
like this
expresses his
video.
frustration with the legal
Comment your
system, helping
thoughts on what part of Dexter's psychology shocked you the most, and subscribe
Miguel
for more
suggests that
explorations
Dexter's
into the
next
hidden motives and inner workings of iconic characters. Remember,
for
sometimes
murder,
the
but
darkest
Dexter
truths
refuses,
about a
as she
character
does.
reflect the unsettling realities within ourselves, and understanding them can be as fascinating as it is terrifying.